Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Rabit, and this is my third video actually on course one. I am taking the real estate salesperson program online through Humber. So I'm just going to summarize course one, module three for you guys today. So let's not waste any time and let's get into it. So in module three, course one, lesson one, they talk about estate interest. An estate interest is an interest in land, or more specifically, the degree, quantity, nature, and the extent of interest that a person has in a property. Okay, they talk about fee simple estate. Fee simple estate is the highest estate or absolute right in real property. The holder of a fee simple estate has the most rights and fewest limitations, and they can use, sell, lease, enter, or give away the property or refrain from any of these rights. A leasehold estate is an interest in land for a definite period of time, for example, a week, a month, or a year, something like that. Fee simple, let's just summarize that again. The highest estate or the absolute right in real property, okay? And real property is tangible and intangible attributes of land. Then they talk about concurrent ownership. Concurrent ownership is defined as two or more persons having the right of ownership at the same time. Concurrent interests normally fall into two primary categories: joint tenancy, and tenants in common. Joint tenancy involves ownership of land by two or more persons. Joint tenancy requires the presence of four unities, which are title, time, possession, and interest. Joint tenancy has also has their right of survivorship. Tenants in common involves concurrent ownership of land by two or more persons. The only unity in tenants in commons is possession, and there is no right of survivorship. So let's just summarize that again. Joint tenancy is ownership of land by two or more persons, where if one dies or if upon death of one, the surviving tenant or tenants acquire the interest in property. Okay, tenants in common is ownership of land by two or more persons, where the interest of a deceased owner does not pass to the survivor. Okay, okay, got that. And ownership alternatives. A condominium is a form of ownership where there is a fee simple ownership of a unit and a tenant in common ownership in the portion used jointly with others, known as common elements. A common element condominium consists only of common elements such as roads, parking lots, golf course, a ski hill, a community center. An equity cooperative is a corporation that owns the land and buildings with members as shareholders in the corporation. Ownership is by way of a share certificate in combination with the occupancy agreement relating to specific unit and often parking and locker. A non-profit housing is without shares and has the primary objective of providing housing for its members. And that's pretty much all the ownership alternatives. No, actually, there's fractional ownership. Fractional ownership is shared ownership that allows an individual to partially own a valuable asset without putting up the money to purchase a whole asset outright. Fractional ownership allows multiple buyers to obtain part of the property titles as tenants in common, with usage rights allocated depending on the size of the fraction purchased. Co-ownership applies to any situation in which two or more persons own property jointly, be it two individuals owning a home, four family members owning a recreational property, or 10 investors owning a plot of land. It is a tenant in common ownership alternative, in which the deed outlines the proportionate interest in property held by each owner. A land lease is the exclusive right to use the land for the time The lease is active but does not give ownership. A life lease, the person does not own the property but an interest in the property. In exchange for a lump sum of payment upfront, the person also pays monthly maintenance fees that include a range of expenses, including snow removal, landscaping, garbage disposal, repairs, building insurance, and possibly meals. And then lesson 1 talks about timeshares, trailers, and houseboat ownerships. So timeshare is a division of property rights into fractional interests based on time. Timeshare interests can be acquired via 2 methods: fee ownership interest and a right to use interest. A mobile home is a transportable, prefabricated structure that is situated in one particular place and used as permanent living accommodation. Houseboats are a form of ownership where the property is a boat used or converted into a dwelling. The ownership is a unique the ownership type is unique, and there is no land in question. So again, timeshare, the division of property rights into fractional interests based on time. A mobile home is a portable dwelling unit that is transported on its own chassis and running gear by towing or other means, and designated to be used as permanent living quarters or for travel. So that is pretty much basically lesson 1, course 1, module 3. We're gonna go over lesson 2. Lesson 2 is ownership rights and limitations. Let's just go over the summary quickly. So in lesson 2, they talk about easements. Okay. Even the highest estate or absolute right in property is subject to some restrictions and limitations, both private and government, imposed of laws of governing authorities. An easement is a right enjoyed by one landowner over the land of another, and is granted for a special purpose rather than a general use and occupation of the land. An easement has 6 defining characteristics. It must be granted for a clear and specific use. It must be comprised of both dominant and severant tenements. It must have separate ownership of the land involved. It must solely benefit the dominant tenement. It runs with the land, so it binds subsequent owners. The dominant and the servient tenement do not have to be adjoining. Dominant tenement is defined as the estate or interest in land that derives benefit from an easement over a servient tenement as a right of way. An easement must counter or benefit on the dominant tenement. I've said that like 16 times now. I hope that helped. Okay, so type of easements. There are several types of easements commonly found in residential properties. The right-of-way is a frequent encountered form of easement that allows a person to travel or pass through another person's land. So a right-of-way is basically allowing the other person passing through somebody else's land. A party wall easement party wall easements are created when registered owners of adjoining parcel of land enter into a party wall agreement in regard to the dividing wall between the attached units. A mutual shared driveway acquires when a strip of land shared by adjoining neighbors is used as a joint driveway by both parties and creates an easement for each party. So let's just go over what's a party wall. Party walls are created when registered owners of adjoining parcel land may enter into a party wall agreement. No, that's pretty easy. So, and then they also talk about restrictive covenants. What's a restrictive covenant, you ask? A restrictive covenant is a type of contractual arrangement that places restrictions on what the owner of the land can do with their property. A restrictive covenant is a legally binding obligation written into the deed of the property and is registered on the title. Restrictive covenant runs with the land. Therefore, a buyer who purchases a property with a restrictive covenant on title must honor these restrictions. And then they talk about an encroachment. An encroachment is a situation that arises when a property owner violates. An encroachment is a situation that arises when a property owner violates the property rights of their neighbors by building a structure wholly or partially on the neighboring property. Adverse possession. Adverse possession occurs when an individual who is not the owner takes possession of the property hostile to and without the consent of the owner. It is possible by adverse possession for an occupier of the land to extinguish the title of the owner. The possessor then becomes in effect the owner of the land. For adverse possession to exist, the possession must be open, exclusive, continuous for a period of time without the consent of the owner, but with the owner's knowledge. The term profit apendre means right of taking. It involves the right to enter upon a property based on a written agreement and take something from it. It is a non-possessory interest in land that is similar to an easement, but it specifically grants the holder only the right to take natural resources such as crops, oils, minerals, timber, and wild game from the land of another. This right can, in some instances, pass with the title upon the sale of the property. So what is a restrictive covenant? It is a type of contractual arrangement that places restrictions on what the owner of the land can do with the property. Okay, that's okay. And an encroachment is a situation that arises when a property owner violates the property rights of their neighbor by building a structure wholly or partially on their neighboring property. So that was pretty easy to understand. And then they talk about other government limitations to property ownership. Expropriation. Expropriation involves the acquisition of private property by the government for the public's best interest and use with fair compensation to the owner. There is a process in place to permit a landowner to object to the expropriation and or the amount of compensation being offered. Other government limitations imposed upon property ownership include the right to regulate and the right to levy tax. And the right to levy taxes. Right to regulate is a right of the government to regulate property for the promotion of public safety, health, morals, and general welfare. It is also referred to as police power. The right to levy taxes is a right of the government to levy taxes on the property. Escheat, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Escheat is the reversion of property to the government or some kind of government agency in the event that a property owner dies, leaving no will and having no legally qualified heir to whom the property may pass. So expropriation, we already talked about that. Escheat basically means if somebody dies, they have no will or heir, the government takes the property. So that is course 1, module 3 summarized. There's only 2 lessons that you need to actually read and talk about. Lesson 3 is basically the summary practice questions, which I highly recommend you go over. That's pretty much it, module 3. And I hope this helped because I'm making these videos to help myself actually, and in doing so I'm hoping that it also helps you. So please, thank you for watching and peace.